You're listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast, where we tell stories of God's faithfulness because the God who did still does. Y'all, I am thrilled for you to hear this conversation today with two friends who came into town all the way from Krakow, Poland. Josiah and Brandi Boyd have lived in Poland since August of 2018. But prior to moving overseas, Josiah actually served as the missions pastor right here at Beltway Park for 4.5 years, and Brandi served as a physical therapist. During their time in Abilene, the Lord began to stir their hearts to step into the unknown and move to Poland. Their heart is to see God move and transform nations as they believe Europe is ripe for a fresh encounter with God and a new revival that will literally shake the continent. So join us as Josiah and Brandi share what they've been up to for the last 5 years, which includes some pretty amazing and miraculous stories of God's faithfulness and provision during the war in Ukraine. If your season is hard right now, if you are needing to take a step of faith that feels overwhelming and seems impossible, I pray you will be encouraged by this amazing couple as they share. So let's get to it. Hey everyone, I'm really excited today to have friends that I haven't seen in a very long time in the studio with me today, Josiah and Brandi Boyd. Hey guys.
Hey.
Hello. It's good to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you guys here all the way from Poland.
Great to be here all the way from Krakow, Poland, or Krakow, Poland, if you're trying to speak Polish.
And how long are y'all here for on the stateside?
We're in the States for 3 weeks this time, so visiting family, visiting partners, hanging out with you.
I know. I'm so thankful, y'all. This is just a dream come true to have y'all sitting in my office today to talk about what God is doing in Poland. And I'm so thrilled to have you guys back. In fact, when I saw you on Sunday from stage, I thought, am I like seeing something? Are my eyes deceiving me? I couldn't believe that you guys were here, but you're here and you've been visiting with friends and family and having a great time talking to ministry partners, as you said. But before we dive into all of what God is doing in Poland, I'd love for you to share a little bit about you guys, like catch our listeners up. Who are you and what are you doing in Poland?
Yeah, so I grew up going to Europe since I was about 10 years old, so I've been involved in Europe for about 25 years. My dad runs a ministry called Prepare International, and so every summer we'd go to Europe and do all of these wonderful things, meet these incredible people, and really see the need for the gospel to really come back to Europe. And so I always had this huge heart for Europe, and then we met. We met at a pancake supper in Lubbock, Texas.
Very romantic.
It was very romantic for college small groups, so I'm a big proponent of small groups and things like that. So I'd always wanted to move to Europe, but then we came here to Hardin-Simmons, and Brandi was doing her physical therapy. And along the way, we joined the staff at Beltway Park, and I was the missions pastor for 5 years here, and that was a lot of fun. It was a really fun time of year. For me, it was really fun because missions has always been a key part of Beltway, but then there's just this massive explosion of mission teams, and then with that came people that were trying to just go long term. So I was here for about 5 years, and we sent out 40 different long-term missionaries and families and different things. So that was a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I can remember, I was actually thinking the other day when I saw you on stage, I had the Night to Shine flashbacks whenever we were running that.
Yes.
I remember someone was like, Josiah, you did a great job. And I said, yes, because I did a great job of helping Sarah be in charge and making it all happen. So,
yes.
So that was a lot of fun. So we were here for 5 years, almost 5 years. Mm-hmm. So it was great. And then we felt the Lord moving us to Poland. So do you want to share about that?
Sure. So I had been to Europe as well, and in 2016 we took a mission team from Beltway to Krakow, and that was my first time there. And I just immediately fell in love with culture, and just something was just pulling at my heartstrings. So I had been to all different countries, but had never felt something like this before. And so I actually heard the Lord say, I want you to make this your home. And so for me, that was huge as well. I knew this was something in Josiah's heart. I knew he loved this place, but it was great because the Lord also put it in my heart as well. And so I wanted to move back immediately right away, but we had contracts and a lot of loans to pay off. So we stuck around here for a little bit longer, and we have now been living in Poland for 5 years. It's gone super fast.
That went quick.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Someone asked us the other day, you've moved, I've moved quite a bit in my life. And someone asked, do you feel like you should move again or things like that? Well, I said, well, we had 1 year of normal, then we had COVID, and then we had our Ukraine event last year. And so it was, I haven't had time to be bored yet. So.
That's good. I love how God aligns hearts, in his perfect timing, and then lines things up in such a way that, it's kairos. It's his perfect timing. And when we get in line with that, man, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to talk about what it is that God is doing and what you're partnering with him in when it comes to what you're doing in Krakow, Poland. So would you mind sharing what is it that you guys are involved in Poland?
Yeah, we years ago, I met a friend of mine that his name's Zibby Marjet. So we've always been friends for a long, long time. And he had planted a church about 15 years ago. And so when we started taking short-term teams from Beltway, we went and partnered with them because they have a huge heart just not to build a church, but really help change the city of Krakow, which most pastors told him when he planted, hey, this is a hard place to go. This city's very difficult to reach and things like that. And so he said, that's okay. I have a big God, and I'm going to go and step out in faith. So we joined him and are on the pastoral team. And then also we work with Prepare International. We do training schools all around Europe. So I oversee all the European, or most of the European projects, and Brandi runs all the day-to-day stuff on making those training schools happen. So we're in, I think, about 6 or 7 countries, with 2 or 3 others coming online in Europe in the next year. So it keeps us really busy.
I bet. So, and for the training school in particular, who is coming to the schools? Can you explain and expound just a little bit on that?
Yeah, so at Prepare International, or PI, we have a real heart to bring practical theological training to people, because a lot of people around the world, they don't have that option to study, to go somewhere and study for longer periods of time. So it's usually weekend-based modules. So it'd be kind of like I know you guys have encounter weekends here, or things like that. So it'd be kind of that type of environment where you'd have 6 to 10 hours of teaching, but it's extremely practical. I love one of my pastor friends that went through the school. He said, I was frustrated the first couple of times I went to your school because there was not enough information. I wanted
more.
I wanted more. And then he said, after a while, I realized that the way I thought and the way I saw the world through the eyes of the kingdom and what God could do to change the world now instead of wait till we go to heaven someday. He said it changed everything for me as a leader. So that's our heart. If we can build people and help them see the kingdom and believe they can bring the kingdom here and now, that's what we try to do. So we work with church leaders and businesses and different groups, just trying to help them see their vision happen in their country. So it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
So people that come, we have a team from all around Europe, and then we have Americans that'll come and do the teaching. So that makes it nice because you have a huge international flair to it, which is fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really fun to be able to partner with so many different believers from other cultures and countries. I can't even imagine how much fun that is to see God immobilize the church in different areas, but all bringing their gifts before the throne, right? And all submitting and surrendering their lives for the sake of his kingdom being made known and manifest on this earth. That's beautiful. Thank you, Lord, for what you're doing. Well, I love that God's timing, I mentioned this earlier, God's timing is really perfect, and it's very unique. He positions us many times in places where maybe at the moment we didn't understand, but then 2020, I mean, we use that a lot. Looking back, we go, oh, that's what you were doing. Okay, I see. So God positions us in places sometimes that man, it's just right in alignment with what he's calling us to do. And if we'll remain obedient in that place, we'll see the fruit of the faithfulness, right? And the obedience, because God brings blessing where there's obedience. And so I wanted us to visit a little bit about the Ukraine, just in the timing of when y'all got there and how you've been involved in the ministry to the Ukrainians. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, that's extremely layered. So we'll see.
I know. I'm sorry.
We'll see what we can do.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, so as a church, it was really interesting for us. We came out of COVID much stronger than we were before COVID, which I know a lot of churches, it was a real challenge. And for us, it was actually an extreme blessing. So we went from before COVID, Pastor David was actually at the last full service pre-COVID before everything shut down for almost a year in Krakow. And so when we came out, we were much stronger. We went from about 90 people on Sundays to over 200. Now we're around 300 or so.
And that's
in a church.
Rare, right, for Europe?
So for perspective, we are now about the third largest Spirit-filled church in the country.
Wow.
And so for me, that's exciting, but also it shows the amount of work that we have left to do and what we're all about and seeing the kingdom. We told people when we moved to Poland, we're not interested in building churches. We're interested in transforming countries. And usually the best way to do that is to build the church and have the kingdom come in a practical, real way through God's people. So we came out, and with that, we have actually had a lot of Ukrainians in our church before the war took place. And so we had lots of people on our staff, actually church staff, our leadership team, they were Ukrainian. And so when the war started, we knew we were going to help. And then with our work with PI, we had a lot of training schools, specifically in the far, far east. And so we said, hey, we're going to help. We're going to help take care of as many people as we can. We're going to send as much money and supplies, whatever we can get. We're going to figure that out. And through some crazy circumstances, we ended up housing over 1,000 refugees for over 6 months, and then another 400 for an additional 3 months. And
At one time.
So that was.
Where were they housed?
The first Sunday, so everything started, I think it was a Thursday. And that first Sunday, we just said, guys, to our church, hey, if you have place, let us know. We had a guy walk up, never seen him before, wasn't a believer, said, hey, I have a 270-bed hotel. It's about an hour from here. You can use it at cost till Easter, which was about 6 weeks. And I said, my first thought, because I'm so full of faith in humanity. I'm like, if he has that much, that big of a hotel, what's the catch, right? Like, there's got to be something. Why is no one else staying at this hotel? But they had actually just done a remodel, and it was a 4-star resort area. It was a beautiful place. So we had some key partnerships and relationships with people and some special interest refugees that actually needed to be protected. And so through that process, we scaled to 6 hotels. And to my knowledge, we were the largest fully encompassing refugee project that went that long in Poland that was private. So there were some others that would just do housing or provide food or things like that. But we took care of all the needs. We started Bible studies. We had people get saved, and it was a crazy time. In addition to that, we were involved with sending about 350 tons so that's like 700,000 pounds of aid that totaled around $8 million worth of supplies into Ukraine, into the Far East where they were hurting the most. And so that was a big thing. We worked with different forms of multiple governments, trying to help them understand the dynamics of things. So it was a really weird thing because we were put in position to have influence on really helping people. So it was a crazy time.
I mean, hands and feet of Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Right there, right then and there.
And the church in Ukraine has exploded. So our friends that have the church in Kharkiv, which is far east, before the war, it was about 200, and now it's 1,500. So several of those are there just for food, but several of them have been saved through all of this. And so God is definitely on the move amidst even now still war, because it's not over. So
Yeah. Wow. Well, because we're on the subject of the Ukraine, I'd love for y'all to maybe share, is there any way, say someone has a heart for Ukraine, they're listening and they want to know how to support. Could you share a way that they might be able to partner with and support Ukraine even now?
So I think one of the things that's really important is just being aware that there's still a war happening, and about a third of the country is occupied at the time of our recording. And I don't want to get into any of the politics or things, you know, because there's lots of talking heads. So I think the big thing is just making, you know, as long as people are aware and praying for the church, I think that's a huge step in being able to support what's happening in Ukraine. And then practically, finances are a great way to help. So we still are active. We're not running 18-hour, 19-hour days anymore. And, you know, I stopped needing my GPS to go to the border, you know, all of those types of things. You know, we're not like that active anymore, but we still have about 100 refugees. Many people have returned. So I say Ukrainians are a little bit like Texans, you know, they want their land, they want to stay in their place. And so many have returned, but being able to help support financially, we still have about 100 refugees that one of our hotels we're still helping fund some of that. And then we're also sending supplies to, like our friend in the Far East, Brandi mentioned. So he feeds about 20,000 people a month right now still. And I don't know where. To be honest, I don't know where he gets the funds to make all of that happen. And we have a lot of other friends that are doing similar things. So those are always the two practical ways, you know, from this side of the ocean is just prayer, praying for safety, praying for peace, praying for wisdom, for all the governments involved. There's a lot of different governments that are interested in this, and some not for great motives, some for good motives, and it's the same with people as well. So just praying for that and praying for believers that God and the gospel would come through in this hard time, and then you can, you know, give and be a part of that.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, I can't even imagine operating at such a high level. I mean, you guys are involved in a multinational ministry, and especially when you consider the crisis that's involved in the situation as well. So I'm curious, how do you do it? How do you stay connected and with eyes on the ultimate goal? How do you do what you're doing day in and day out to keep your eyes on Jesus?
a lot of prayer, especially for the first 6 months when Josiah was working 18 to 19-hour days. It was crazy. But we also knew that it was just temporary, and that, we didn't know how long it was going to last, but just pressing into, this is not going to be forever, but this is a season, and the things we were pouring into it was needed at that time. And this is the relationships, the strategies that he had put us in before. It was preparing us for a time like that. And so I think, too, just community, and just we were always around people all of the time, but just kind of processing things with each other, helping each other, encouraging each other, because we couldn't give up. It wasn't something we could just wake up that day and say, I just don't feel like doing it today. Yeah. So, Josiah, you can share your great wisdom of how you made it through all of that.
I think, one of the things I've thought about that a lot, and just first, we had a community respond as well. And so we had a staff of about 10 people that were living in our facilities. And the average age of that group was probably 24.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
So our facilities director was like 25 years old, and he was running the show and everything. And so you have this responsibility to these guys, and then also, it's kind of like, there's it's like the rising tide raises all the ships type of thing. And so,
Yes.
so when you see everyone's in this together and everyone's sacrificing at such an intense level, it makes it a lot easier
Yeah.
to go all in. So I think that was something that was really special and unique. And I think, God gives us grace to do things in certain seasons of time. And so we took, there are so many times we just took massive steps of faith. And one of my favorite verses, I use this in our leadership talks and different things all the time, is Hebrews 11:6. It says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so when you start thinking about that, faith is the evidence, it's the proof of things we hope for. I think I say this all the time. It's, like making footsteps in the sand. You see this picture, and that's evidence of where someone's been. But the kingdom of God's upside down. And so we have to make the footsteps that God's going to walk in many times. It's taking those steps of faith, and then God's going to fill those. So that's, our steps of faith is the evidence, the proof. And so there were so many times we made a 6-month commitment, and it's a $5 million project. And we decided to do that with only $1 million in the bank. And that was a huge jump from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's a leap.
A little bit of leap, and
not a step, as a leap.
and we're a church in Poland of 200 people, so it's not exactly like we were just flowing with milk and honey, so to speak. So
Right.
So I think we just constantly took this steps of faith, and Hebrews 11:6 says without faith it's impossible to please God. Well, if you turn it around, that means that when we're walking in extreme faith, the pleasure of God seems to show up. And so even though there was crazy long days, high stress situations, sometimes life and death, in many situations, there was such a pleasure you could feel from the Lord, and there was a grace to just walk through it. I mean, Polish winters aren't pleasant sometimes, and things like that. And I mean, no one was sick. It was just really an extreme grace that the Lord put on us. And so that's whenever things were closing, that was kind of when I could feel the grace lifting. And Brandi could feel the grace lifting, especially in how I just responded to life. And so that was like, okay, this level of intensity is probably not
Sustainable.
Not what you're operating on some serious adrenaline each and every day. It was just, it was weird. I think our adrenal glands are probably a little tired right now after last year.
I think also the power of testimony. I mean, there were constant testimonies happening at our refugee centers, but also with our partners in Ukraine. And so you can't help but just keep going when you're hearing the stories of what he's doing and what we had, I guess you could say, the privilege of being a part of. Obviously, we would love to not go through all of that again, but just constant testimonies and remembering those and telling people those, and not just letting them finish, but actually reminding yourself of who God is and what he's doing.
It's evidence of his power and glory being manifest on this earth. Yeah.
Definitely.
Through people.
Yes.
For people.
Yes.
Yeah. And like Brandi said, it was a unique, this is a unique situation that's really going to reshape a lot of the world, and just the way countries will align and things. And so to get to be a part of serving people in that moment. So it's, to me, I think that was special. And I realized that we're sowing seeds to Ukraine, to Poland, to other parts of Europe for the future by just going all in and trusting the Lord will give you wisdom of when to pull back and do other things like that.
He's faithful like that.
Yes.
Well, I have a question. I know it's not on the paper. Sorry. But I think this will be a fun one. What do you know now about Europeans? Like, living there, you've lived there 5 years. You've gone through some crisis modes. You've been learning the language. You've been eating the food. You've been in the culture. What do you know about Ukrainians, or those who live in Poland? What do you know about Europeans in general that you didn't know before? What do you love about living there?
Well, you can go first.
Oh, I mean, there's great food. I mean, let's just be practical. There's all sorts of wonderful food in Europe, so that's
So Krakow
really fun.
is like they've won awards as the food culture capital of Europe.
Well, I didn't know that.
So it's a very,
That's
it's-
awesome.
Yeah, so we live a very tough life when it comes to restaurants and things like that.
What's
so,
your favorite thing to eat?
So we actually eat quite a bit of Indian food. Which
Indian?
is shocking. I know, it doesn't make
Indian
sense.
food in Poland. Okay.
But
Yes.
it's not, it's probably not the greatest, but, let's be honest, we're in Abilene, Texas. Our standard of Indian food's not
So
probably
fair.
what you're going to
That's
find
fair.
in Mumbai. But
But it's also, Krakow is a very, very international city, which is also why we have an English service at our church. And so it's great because we have all these international cuisines all the time. So
we'll do theme community nights, bring people in and things. But,
Yeah.
But as far as living in Poland, what's some things that, besides amazing food?
the culture, they're just like feisty, and especially Poland, but also like Croatians are similar, just Slovaks in general, I think. But two things I love about Polish people and Polish culture. One is extreme hospitality. They're extremely generous, love to have you in their home. You have to jump over the wall, which can be several years worth. So in our neighborhood, actually, it's taken 3+ years just to kind of get relationship with neighbors and finally be able to have conversations, just because they have really big walls, which is pretty general in most of Europe. But once you get over that, people are extremely generous, extremely hospitable. And then one of the other things I love about Polish culture specifically is family. So they have a huge value of family, and there's a huge presence of fathers. You constantly see on the weekends, it's family units together, going for walks along the river, doing activities together. In the evenings, the dad's the one pushing the stroller down the road with the little child. And so you just see there really is connection in family. They really value family time. Holidays are a huge deal, but even
Man.
every weekend they go and travel and visit family. And so that's really beautiful to see, especially in this world now, but they really do value connection and family time.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the big things, and I knew this, having traveled since I was a kid to Europe, but really experiencing it once living there is, I think it's described like this a lot of times, especially people that live in the south of the U.S. We have pretty small outer wall, so we're very friendly, but then people that really know us well, we kind of have a pretty big inner wall, and there's a pretty tight circle, and it's a little bit opposite in most of Europe. Is like what Brandi said, is there's an okay like connection, but it's usually there's a big kind of outer wall, and so sometimes people think maybe they're not as friendly or things like that. But then once you're a friend, the word friend means something much deeper than how we would describe it here.
Wow.
And so once you're in, and there's they have your back, they're going to be with you, and it's the same. And we saw that probably about 2 or 3 years in, some people that we would consider friends, just a different level of relationship we had was much higher. So, and one thing I love about Poland is they are very good at legally not following the law. It's amazing.
How does
It's
that
like, I'm
happen?
like, oh my gosh, you are, I feel like, oh.
They're
Little
very
bit-
creative.
A little bit of Texan. Yeah, it's just absolutely amazing how they can legally not follow the law. Like COVID, it was great whenever new regulations would come out or new rules. A gym became the church of the body, restaurants were closed, and so they had official taste testing applications so you could walk in. And it was just amazing how they could legally figure out how to not follow the law. So that's kind of fun. Just
Creative.
yeah, very very creative. They're very creative. So
I love that. Well, I'm so thankful that you guys have come in today. I just have a couple questions left for you, and then I'd love for you guys to pray us out and pray for our listeners. But for believers on the state side, like on this side, for those who don't go to Europe once a year or once every other year or ever, how can we at home be praying for missionaries right now? There are missionaries all over the world. We know that it's not just Europe. They're all over the place. Beltway partners with so many mission partners all over the globe. And so how can we be praying right now in this time, in this season, for missionaries from all over?
I think one thing, even we just have friends that are missionaries in different places, even just in different places in Europe. But I think one is just strength and rest.
Okay.
So I just kind of feel like there's a weariness, there's an excitement, and there's hope for what's happening and what's coming. But I think just a strength to keep going, and then just rest, especially Ukraine didn't just impact Poland, it impacted all across Europe. And so I think just rest and renewal and refreshment, but also just that mindsets would be shifted. So we don't want to do things like we've always done them before, because that wasn't really working. So just for kingdom to really be experienced, and people to really come to know the Lord in a really intimate way, and for that to shape everything that they're doing, that it not be this divided plate, but that the kingdom really impacts every atmosphere of their life. And so just leaders being raised up, it's not just missionaries by themselves, but it's
laborers
them,
to join you in the field. Yeah.
yeah, and then pouring into leaders, and those leaders catching it as well. And that's what's going to change cities, and that's what's going to change nations and change Europe.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier, and one of the things that I think is really interesting, we have some good friends that we talk to from time to time that have been missionaries, like for almost, I think, over 20 years or something like that.
30 years.
Over
now,
30
yeah.
years now. So they've done this a while, and one of the things that's weird is usually the biggest challenges missionaries face is still just day-to-day life. So even they were fluent in everything, been in the country they were in for years, they said day-to-day life is still. And so one of the things just practically is the day-to-day life, there's still, your brain is fully, even 5 years in now, our brain sometimes is just fully engaged on normal functions of everyday life, just because it's still foreign, even though it's our home and it feels like home in Krakow. It's still foreign in many ways. So just that missionaries would succeed in day-to-day life. And then the other thing I think that's big is, if someone's a missionary, so they should be in a place where there's less believers than, where they were. And I remember when I was a missions pastor here, I would tell our missionaries leaving Beltway, it's like, you are going to a place that doesn't have Beltway. If you were going to a place that had a Beltway, I would not send you to that place, because there's already someone doing the stuff. And so most of it's very pioneer and very on the edge of things. And so I think one thing that just really practical to pray for missionaries is that they would see some fruit, and that they would see I'll say this, or they would have the tenacity to continue in being faithful to what God's called them to. Because not everyone gets to see people ask our church, why are you guys growing so fast? Why? I mean, we've gone from 1 to 3 services and things, and it's really, there was a group of people that for 10 years did the same thing over and over again, and being great and seeing great things happen is oftentimes pretty boring.
Slow.
It's very slow, and so that's and so I think for missionaries, being able to pray that they see that, so that they can have the tenacity to continue that vision, that burning desire God put in them to see someplace turned upside down for the kingdom. And so those are the two, just really practical, that maybe are things not talked about as often that we experience personally. And then talking to other missionaries, it's something they walk through as well. So in Europe itself, it is a pretty unreached area. So besides Ukraine and the United Kingdom or England, most of the other countries are under 1% evangelical believers. So and you can make an argument, if you look at their history, the normal everyday person never really got a chance to hear the real gospel, because it was very political.
Interesting.
So there's been pockets of revivals, but for example, Poland hasn't had a significant outpouring of God in their history. So that was worth noting in history books. And so for us, we want to be the first. And there's a lot of other countries that have similar stories. So that's the big thing for Europe, is although there's great cathedrals that are beautiful, the hearts of the people have never really had a chance to hear the gospel. And that's why we're there. That's why we work in a lot of countries to try to help change that.
Well, if we can be praying for Europe, I mean, what I'm hearing you say specifically is to pray for an outpouring of God's Spirit soon.
Yes.
And often.
Soon, often, and
in multiple
a lot.
places.
Over and over.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. Aside from the obvious of that, like asking for his Spirit to pour out on Europe, what else can we be praying for when it comes to Europe?
So for me, because I mean, I've known what's been happening for 25 years. So I'm excited. Like there's, sometimes we like to look at the bad, but there's so many great things happening. And so for me, it's, can these multiply? I don't want them to be nice stories. I don't want them to be the nice stories of the good old days.
Sure.
So I'm praying that this is a foundation for God to do something. And then I think just as far as besides just a move of God, just for leaders. So that's why we do what we do, is because, when you have, who is it? I think John Maxwell, someone really famous, said everything rises and falls on leadership. And that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but when you have strong leaders, whatever God is doing, usually it can get multiplied well.
Yeah.
So for me, those are the two big things. When people see the kingdom and when they enter the kingdom and they begin to walk in the kingdom themselves, that's when the world changes. And so we just need more leaders. So I can't find a place in the New Testament that says to pray for the lost, which is weird. So I've said this in a couple of places, and no one has told me otherwise. Obviously, we should pray for the lost, but Jesus over and over again talks about praying for people that can go grab the harvest, and praying for the laborers. So we just need more. That's the end of it. We need more.
That's good. Yeah, the world will always need leaders.
Yes.
To rise and lead with godly wisdom.
Amen.
Empowered by the Holy Spirit. And that's how the world changes.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming in today. How can people, if they want to know more information about you guys, where can they go?
So the easiest is probably just our website. We have all our contact information, and we are super great at social media.
Great.
Total sarcasm
I'm
there.
kidding, so.
No, we are not.
Yeah. Last year we had to not be involved for other reasons, but
Sure.
But yes, so our website, theboyds.world. So it's really, really easy, www.theboyds.world. So there'll be our info, contact, and all of those things on how you can stay up to date with what the Lord's doing in Poland and Europe and Ukraine and all the fun things. So it's a great time to be involved in the church in Europe. So we love it.
That's awesome. Well, before we say see you later, which is sad because I don't like the part where we have to say, okay, we're done. But would you guys mind praying over just our listeners today and over what God has on their lives, because he's called them too, to go forth and make disciples where they are.
But Lord, I just thank you for this time, Lord. I thank you for our discussion. And Lord, I thank you that you have put all of us in positions where we have the opportunity to bring hope, to bring the kingdom, and to bring your love to people each and every day, Lord. So Lord, I just pray that you would give us each the courage to make footprints in the sand where you're going to fill. Lord, I pray that you would challenge us even to take those new risks of faith, because there's nothing like seeing you move through our lives where we just get to experience your pleasure and your delight and your closeness, Lord. And so, Lord, I thank you that even now there's someone listening that knows what you've placed in their heart, and they're debating on taking that next step. Lord, I pray that they would take that next step and put that footprint down so that you can fill it and do what only you can do. Bringing hope, bringing love, and bringing fulfillment of your mission in the world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you guys so much.
It's so good to be here.
Wasn't that so good? I hope you were encouraged today, whatever season you may be in. I know I was. I think I needed to hear what Josiah said about faith in Hebrews 11. I had not thought about faith like footprints in sand, and I just loved that imagery, that when God calls us to take steps of faith, we must make the steps that God will then come and fill. So it's just really encouraging to think that when we're stepping out in faith, it is the power and pleasure of God that shows up. How awesome is that? If you would like more information about this incredible couple, head on over to our show notes for links and resources. And would you join me in praying for the Boyds and for Europe? Before we wrap up, I, first of all, wanted to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. I pray you enjoyed really, really good time with family and friends and eat some yummy food too. Secondly, I wanted to invite you to join me for a special podcast mini-series, Embracing Advent, right here on the Beyond Sundays podcast. Beginning November 28th through December 19th, we are going to focus on Jesus, sharing stories of hope, joy, and love as we prepare our hearts, homes, and families for Christmas, which is the most wonderful time of the year, right? Thanks so much for listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast. We hope you'll have a wonderful day. And remember, God is always moving, and He's moving in your life too, beyond Sundays. Happy Thanksgiving, friends. Bye.